Now, we are next going to be continuing our interpretations. We're going to be discussing what it's like when you have Rahu and Ketu in the sign, in the nakshatra of Mula. Now, as we've just read, the first thing we could see is that, of course, Mula is very welcome and useful wherever and whenever we need to dig below the surface, cut through lies, and uncover the real truth of things. So it's supportive of truth seekers, detectives, researchers, scientists, and so on. So sharp and deep planets like Mars, the nodes, and Saturn tend to bring out this potential. Rahu is especially powerful here. That's what we've read. Now, we're going to talk about Rahu, but as always, I first like to talk about Ketu, because Ketu is the root. Having Ketu in Mula is a very interesting thing. Both of these relate to roots in a strong way. Ketu is our root. It's our past lives, and it is essentially a root that needs to get purged. Esoterically speaking, we would not have incarnated on Earth unless we had karma to work out. We come here to work out our karma, to come back into a state of pure self-realization and bliss, purity, by purging that which is untrue and realizing that which is real and true and sattvic, satya. Ketu is that thing for all of us. So to have Ketu in Mula, there's an interesting signification there. You might find yourself cracking very deeply into the reasons why you keep incarnating in the first place. What is it in your soul, your past lives, your genetics that is not yet purified and that keeps bringing you here? It's interesting enough that, again, Vic Dicara doesn't like using the Vimshottari Lord. The Vimshottari Lord is the planet that experiences, the first Mahadasha when you were born with the moon in this nakshatra. If you're born in Mula Nakshatra, the first dasha you experience is Ketu. So there is, again, Vic Dicara wouldn't say that Ketu is in the energy of this nakshatra. Ernst is kind of more open to it. It's a debatable thing. So that's why I'm not going to say too much about it. But there is a signification that Ketu is the Vimshottari Lord of Mula. I digress. So, if you have Ketu in the sign of Mula, then your Rahu is going to be in one of two places. It's going to either be in Mrigashirsha or it's going to be in Ardra. And having Rahu in Mrigashirsha and Ardra are really quite different. To have them both be bridging, to have Mula in Ketu, and Mula and Rahu. Okay, well, let's do them both. Let's do Ketu and Mula, Rahu in Mrigashirsha. There's going to be a desire in Mrigashirsha for diplomacy. It's a bit of a unifier. It's incapable of personal bias, Mrigashirsha. It's kind of a chameleon with no firm values. Mula is intense. So Rahu in Mrigashirsha is going to actually soften the Mula a little bit. It's going to cause them to be diplomatic. And this would be a Mula Ketu person, where the Rahu in Mrigashirsha allows you to be a politician, to have the sense of, unfolding the roots, the crack, the lies, bringing out this journalistic report on this thing that our leader did. But you're gonna do it in a way that's still gonna kind of keep you protected. It's gonna keep you feeling like, you've got Rahu and Mrigashirsha. You're looking to bring into your consciousness the the reputation and the energy of one who is diplomatic, who's kind of working for everybody. And the Mula in you, the Ketu Mula, is this underdog that is working for everybody to take out these key lies and fractures in the system. So that softens things a little bit. If you have Ketu in Mula and Rahu is in Ardra, this is a little bit more like the pure cop. Like, this is the guy who's going to kind of bust down the door, not care what it breaks on its path. It can be, people will see him as kind of like someone who's way out there, stands out as being a figure of righting wrongs, fixing injustices, the Black Knight vigilante, the Batman. Ketu Mula, Rahu and Ardra is like Batman, who's kind of taking matters into his own hands because no one else is going to do it. And he gets known as the Batman, as the Dark Knight who comes along and cleans things up and does these things that need to be done. So that's an interesting sort of take there, In any case, whether Rahu is in Ardra or Mrigashirsha, just checking that I was right on that. Wherever your Rahu is, Ketu in Mula is eventually going to be overbearing. At first it's going to be overbearing with its root seeking. It's going to basically look for all superficial roots. And it's going to take away, being so focused on, again, with Ketu in Mula, they've got a log in their own eye, just like we all do. And Ketu in Mula, at first, is going to be looking to take out the specks in other people's eye. Until they get to be about 36, the Rahu's going to turn on. Then Rahu matures at 43 for all of us. And then Ketu matures at 48. At some point, the Mula is going to have the understanding that I'm wasting my time pulling the specks out of everybody else's eye out. Now it's time for me to pull the log out of my own eye. And be the journalist that you are, to be the person who is purifying the negative energy of other people. That might still be part of who you are. That might be a part of your job, part of your thing, part of your energy, part of your soul evolution. To pull that darkness energy out of other people. But this eventually won't be a projection. You won't be ignoring your own darkness by doing this. Rather, it's going to be a channel for you pulling out your own darkness. And this will especially happen depending on all the other things related to Ketu. If you've got Ketu is likely in Sagittarius at this time in the tropical zodiac. I always like to make these videos, in case people decide to watch my videos 5,000 years from now. Ketu would be in a different sign, a different tropical sign. But for the sake of the example, in today's time, Mula mostly falls into Sagittarius and I think a little bit into Capricorn. So if you have to look at the Ketu sign lord, which in the case of Sagittarius would be Jupiter. If Jupiter is doing very well, then Ketu falling in Sagittarius, Mula Nakshatra, the Mula Nakshatra agenda will do better. You have to, in order for the Mula agenda to do well for any planet, you got to look at the sign dispositor. Right? That's a tight way to put it. If the sign dispositor of Ketu in Mula is doing well, then much soul work will be done. Much cleansing of the soul will be done. Much purifying work. Figuring out darkness that the soul has just been looking to purify for a long time. This incarnation and possibly the last few strings of incarnations might have been predicated on sweeping the cobwebs and the darkness out of the soul that has not been realized, that's not been focused on. And it's going to be your soul. It should be the main guts of it. But doing this with other people might be a channel for your own soul cobweb clearing with Mula, with Ketu and Mula. Which essentially, you will do so much of this Mula energy, and you'll probably be frustrated by it because it'll come to you. This political mudslinging, people lying to you, you'll find that it happens to you, that other people lie to you, and you can't understand why. All these people are always lying to me all the time. And you'll slowly need to discover that there are roots of trauma or some darkness inside yourself that you've been keeping from yourself, that you have not been confronting, that you have not been facing. And as time goes on, the deeper you get into anything inside yourself that you have a hard time facing and confronting, the more other people are going to lie to you. The more that you're going to see the cracks and facades and untruths in other people, and that you'll find that you'll have people saying things about you that are untruthful, and the more frustrated you'll get about that. Because the truth is that a lot of humans just do that. A lot of humans just do that to buffer themselves up. It doesn't matter that much to anybody except for people with karma in Mula. You might be experiencing that people are going to talk. You get in a relationship with someone, and it could be the best relationship, and it's perfect, but people are going to talk. They're going to wonder, what are they like behind closed doors? Oh, I've seen this person do this. I don't know. You never know. People are going to talk, but that doesn't matter. We just keep doing our activity. But if you've got karma in Mula, it's going to be overemphasized. Why are they talking about me? It bothers you. Likely, it only bothers you because you have cobwebs left unchecked that you are not confronting within yourself. They're throwing these little distracting tennis balls at you, and you're distracted by them. But if you be zen about it, once you extract your own poisons and from your own roots, then anybody can lob anything at you, and you're not going to care. You're looking for the deeper things that are actually causing problems in the world, and not just any little frilly thing. Ketu develops this as it matures. Ketu eventually finally matures at 48, but even at age 36, your nodes are going to begin to flip on, where up to age 36, you operate very unconsciously through Ketu, through these lies. Then at 36, Rahu in its nakshatra, whether it's in Ardra or Mrigashirsha, is going to help you to take the focus out of yourself and into the true purpose of the darkness of niriti, which is purifying what's truly needed to be purified, the roots of all problems around you and inside you. Rahu maturing is going to cause you to pull out taking it personally that this energy is even happening, and you're just going to get over it, that this energy is here, that people are going to do things with me. And usually, sometimes they've got personal agendas, sometimes they got bigger agendas in slinging your name down into the mud. The less you take it personally, the more people are going to sense that you're just doing what you are in a benevolent way. They're going to smell that you're just this type of person who does things for the right reasons. But if you've got planets mixed up with Ketu, if you got Jupiter, or if you got any planet conjunct Ketu while Ketu is in Mula, or in the same sign, regardless, Ketu's agenda in Mula is going to get very entangled in that planet in a way that might always be there and always be difficult. At which case, the best thing that you can do is come clean with yourself and accept the mudslinging as part of reality for humans, because humans are idiots sometimes. As long as you're keeping your own karma clean, observing what's necessary in yourself, meditating, letting go of the compulsive nature of things, then you'll be able to just start doing the pratibhanjana, doing this back and forth of agitating these annoying lies or bad things or fractures in the reality, you'll be able to do it in a way that is the right ones at the right time instead of being swamped by them and taking it all personally. Right? I hope that's helpful for Ketu and Mula people. Now let's do a switch. Let's do a little flipsy-doo-dah. We're still reading from Nakshatra, the authentic heart of Vedic astrology. We're looking at the interpretations now of Rahu in Mula. And it's going to be similar to what we've just given for Ketu, but I'm going to do my best to stretch it out. Now remember, Vic's interpretation of this particular position, he says that Mula is very supportive of truth seekers, detectives, researchers, scientists. Sharp and deep planets here, Mars, nodes, and Saturn, are going to bring out the positive potential of Mula as being able to be malefic, to be intelligent about how it brings about the discovering or unveiling of lies. Because the vigilante, Mula can be a bit of a vigilante. It's that male dog energy. Mula is the Dark Knight. It's Batman. It takes matters into its own hands because it knows the police can't fully do it right because they've got their corruption. It's the Dark Knight that goes and can be vigilante and take things into their own hands. But that can get people into a lot of trouble depending on the planet. Again, we've just talked about how Sun and Jupiter can be particularly a little bit too Batman when it's in Mula and actually get itself into trouble because it's so connected to the dharma of the Sun and Jupiter that it wants to be known as this vigilante. Now, Mars, Saturn, and the nodes are a bit different. It's okay with doing the action and it doesn't need to identify with it like Sun and Jupiter do. Now, what Vic particularly tells us is that Mars, the nodes, and Saturn bring out the potential of being an intelligent, smart vigilante who will unveil to the lies to the right people at the right time so that they can, their hands are free. They did their job as a journalist, and nobody needs to know that it was my journalism that's going to cut my head off later, or something like that. They just do it in the right way. What Vic tells us is that Rahu is especially powerful here in Mula. Rahu in Mula knows how to do the as Tia calls it, the Avenger archetype. Rahu in Mula is a particularly powerful, we got to remember that Rahu is actually one of the divine spirit. It shows an essence of our spirit. Mula, Ketu really is this misty thing that always is actually a root that we're all looking to unpluck through Rahu. So we can see why Rahu in Mula is actually a very interesting placement. Rahu is going to get to the root of things. And this could be the root of things in your external world. By helping people. This can make a great psychologist or some kind of researcher, even a medicinal practitioner who works with different bitter medicines, herbs, and poisons to help purify and purge things. Shamanic people who read energy and will use plants connected to that energy to purge out an energetic system. It's also possible that in the deeper sense, that could be a part of the Rahu Mula experience. But there's a deeper thing happening where Rahu, especially when it's positioned and placed in the right way, is very strong at seeing its own karmic hang-ups and clearing the cobwebs and the darkness in the heart and soul of this incarnation. It's possible that you've incarnated several times with Ketu in either Mrigashira or Ardra, and now Rahu is in Mula to try and get to the heart, get to the root of the false the falsity that your Ketu is causing, because Ketu can do this. Ketu we're too much of Ketu, we're too close to it, and so we become so enwrapped by Ketu's energy that it's hard to see it. I often talk about Ketu. It's like you're looking for your keys in this room, and you look under the couch, you look under everything, but there's this central pillar in the middle of the room that someone has tucked your keys under there. And it's so central to the room. It's like your back is up against this thing, and you're looking in 360 directions around the room with your back against that pillar. And you say, I just can't find the root. I just don't get it. There's all these parts of me that I just never get to the bottom of myself. And it's because the thing your back has been leaning on is the one central pillar in the room that you'd never thought to look under, because you're so close to Ketu. So Rahu in Mula is going to really bring out the root, find that root, almost to the point where it's such a deep discovering of your own karmic condition that, it's one thing to know something, but it's another thing to be it. And you might find that you know your karmic condition with Rahu and Mula, but you still work through it, and have to move through it. It's like, it's the example I can bring up, if you've got Rahu and Mula, and for whatever reason your father was an alcoholic and you picked up that alcoholism and now you're an alcoholic, and you, through life, you've learned over time that it's your alcoholism. It's something, the reason you drink alcohol is because your father was abusive or some traumatic thing happened, and now you use this to escape from it. Rahu and Mula is going to make you realize, oh, that's that thing, this trauma, this stuff, this junk that I had was what is causing me to have this behavior. But you still you still do the behavior. You still don't necessarily go digging into your traumas because you might have other things going on. And you'll see it, and it's almost too hard to deal with. But you'll see it. That's kind of how this Rahu and Mula can work. And it can work that way in the soul, and it can probably work that way with a lot of things, of just seeing the fragmented untruths, the lies that contradict each other in any situation. But Rahu, again, knowing, with Rahu and Mula, it's going to get to the root of all the roots. It's going to see all these roots that are contradicting each other, and it's going to go to the biggest root of them all and think, what's the most important and useful way for me to use my researcher dog sniffing energy? But this also, of course, depends on all things. Rahu can get an ego in Mula, just like it can in any place. It's ultimately, as Vic Dicara has said, we know that Rahu is a good place, a good thing to have in Mula. But you can have other planets that are debilitated here. If planets are shamed by Rahu, and, if you've got Venus and Mars and Rahu all in the same sign, then the Rahu Mula Nakshatra agenda is going to be exacerbated by that starved Venus, for example, or that ashamed Venus is what that would be. You can look up Lajatati Avashtas and that shame to know what I'm talking about there. Whenever you have a planet with a malefic and a node, it becomes ashamed. And the shame of that Venus in that situation is going to play into the Rahu and Mula narrative, where they're going to see something that has shamed them always. That's going to be a root that they see there, and they're always going to be trying to purify this root, this shame of Venus. And it might dig them into very traumatic places, or whatever it is that's causing that shame in their early childhood. And this whole digging of roots thing, it's almost like they can't accept that happened, because it might be sometimes traumas happen to us that are a root that can't really be purified and purged. And the Rahu Mula person sees that root and wants to purify it. And over time, though, they'd probably do a lot of work to let go of it energetically, spiritually, whatever. But it might be so, it's embarrassing, and it might mess with things. because this is the nature of difficult planets, difficult planetary combinations with the nodes. It's got to work through that node's agenda. So I digress. You've always got to keep aware of everything in this way. Look at the whole chart. Look at everything going on with your Rahu in order to define what's going on with the Rahu and Mula Nakshatra agenda. Now, if Rahu is in Mula, then you have two possible places for your Ketu. Ketu can be in Mrigashirsha, or Ketu can be in Ardra. Similar to what we just did for the reverse. Ketu in Mrigashirsha is going to be a bit more of a diplomatic person, but they're going to be so diplomatic in this way. They're a unifier. They don't want to be personally biased. They don't want to... No, they want to be friends with everybody. But sometimes they have no firm values. Ketu and Mrigashirsha. They have no firm values. There's a sort of placating. They placate to everybody. And the Rahu in Mula is going to really feel when Mrigashirsha Ketu is placating. And that will cause you to be fake. But the Rahu in Mula is going to make you almost want to throw up. Like, I can't believe I wasn't real in that moment. It's like you're with, you're with your boyfriend or your husband who, it's like you're Mrigashirsha, let's say Mrigashirsha Ketu woman. She's with her boyfriend, and her boyfriend and her are walking, and they meet some old friends of her boyfriend's who have done something, or they had some, her boyfriend used to be known for doing something bad, or like he had to grow through this difficult thing, like he used to be a thief, or he used to be an alcoholic, or whatever. And she's walking with them. She's got Mrigashirsha Ketu. And those old friends come along and say, "Hey, Drinky, hey, Rummy. Hey, how's it going there, big guy? Yeah, how you doing in your life? Yeah, we always knew that you were going to be a piece of shit because you were drinking so much." And all these things that are kind of embarrassing to the boyfriend. And the girl with Mrigashirsha Ketu is going to want to be diplomatic. So, I can understand them saying this in this moment, But as time goes on, her placating to those people, the Mula in her, Rahu and Mula, would eventually mature to say, "Okay, guys, let's get real. You were hanging with him at that time. You're probably just as drunk as he was, and look how much he's cleaned up." She'll come out hard with the Rahu and Mula, where she's almost embarrassed that she used to placate in those kinds of moments, but now she's hard on it. So Mrigashirsha Ketu needs to learn to have an identity and firm values, and the Rahu and Mula is going to allow a sharpness in being real. And no matter how much Mrigashirsha tries to please everybody, this speech of this fracture in this person is going to cause some polarity. It's not going to be happy with everybody, but the Rahu has to do it, because that's a true key part of who you are, is being able to speak to what is true, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's painful, and even if it shows bias on your part. Still got to do it. So then Ketu in Ardra is going to be, as we've said, this is the person who's a real cop. This is the real Batman energy. With Ketu and Mrigashirsha, you can do the Mula thing, describing the lies, in a way that is still diplomatic, that shows that you're still on everybody's side. With Ketu in Ardra, in Rahu, in Mula, it's a pretty good placement. If I remember correctly, I'd have to dig quickly into Ardra, and it's worth it. What the heck, we're here. I just want to see the interpretation. Saturn, Mars, and the nodes, and somewhat the Sun, contribute significantly towards bringing out this side of Ardra. indicating an uncompromising fearlessness in opposing and defying the lies and injustices in society, seeking the truth, being unwilling to compromise with deception. When Ardra malfunctions, it does not discriminate well about what should be destroyed and what should be preserved. So softer planets bring out that side of Ardra. When Ardra functions properly, it destroys things that deserve and need to be destroyed. So Saturn, Mars, and the nodes, and somewhat the Sun, do well in Ardra. So it's probably the better thing to have Ketu in Ardra and Rahu and Mula. Both of those nakshatras are hard, tough nakshatras that require hard malefic energies to function properly. So Ketu in Ardra and Rahu and Mula probably makes one of the great, it's painful because those are tough nakshatras, but these are tough energies. Ketu and Rahu are tough energies. We want to have them in tough nakshatras so that there's no, essentially the Ardra energy of seeking to describe injustices. When soft planets are there, it's going to do it in the wrong ways through its relationships and personal things. But when Ketu is there, it's going to, Ardra Ketu is going to beam with the truth of its consciousness, and no matter how hard and sharp it is in order to do that, it will still be satisfying. There will be the right application of like a vigilante justice warrior energy. Again, it's like Batman, who is unafraid. Like he doesn't need to be known as this energy. With Ketu Ardra, you're eliminating karmic evil and energy inside yourself and inside of others that exists for the purpose of your energetic cleansing. You're not doing it because you want to get seen by everybody as this great journalist who is a big hero for being the underdog, for taking down the bad guy. Ardra Ketu will get used over time to just purifying evil for the sake of evil. But again, Ardra has to do exactly what Mula has to do. For this person, they are going to have negative energy. They seek to purify things. And simply the big thing is that they have to stop taking the specks out of their neighbor's eye and pull out the log in their own eye. Once Ketu and Ardra matures, the Mula in the Rahu Mula is actually going to make you realize where you have been projecting, where you have been unfair. When you were Mr. Justice and you were this detective private eye, you put that guy behind bars, and you really rode hard on your brother, your big brother, because he did all these bad things. Ardra Ketu will do those kinds of things. And for example, Ketu and Ardra is going to be very hard on their big brother or someone that they're jealous of because there's projection going on. And Ardra Ketu eventually has to recognize when they are projecting, when it's coming from some personal insecurity inside of them that they know they've recognized now, that they're acting on an insecurity. And their social justice warrior energy is just pure anger and hatred that's not actually serving anybody. And they're just spewing darkness into the world. Sometimes Ardra Ketu will do this for a long time, but especially if Rahu is in Mula, Mula will help them to see the roots of truth, of the fact that they are themselves psychologically unwell and they need to cut out the root inside themselves. Then the Ardra and Mula energy can combine for positive ways to do great work in the world. They don't need to be seen by anybody. They're just doing it for their own karmic purification. And they can do great things. They can remove a lot of evil in the world. But again, you have to consider if there's personal planets involved with the nodes in their signs, or if the sign lord of the nodes is not well, then there's going to be chinks in this narrative. There's going to be things enwrapped in this narrative. If the sun is with Ketu in Ardra, Or let's say if the sun is with Mula so the sun is with Rahu in the sign of Mula, then there's going to be some sun energy, some affectation of the father that the person will never feel fully satisfied in uprooting. The bitterness will never go away, and it will cause them to always be attacking authorities and attacking people in power, and they'll have complications with people who are in power, who are there for good reasons, who are doing the right thing. Rahu, Sun conjunct in Mula is just going to take it personally no matter what. And they're going to have an energy that frustrates them no matter what. They have to see that energy in themselves and just deal. Accept that energy, meditate, let the lightning pass through you as you continue to do your work as this uprooting person.